Good morning, everyone. How are we today? Well, um, thank you for joining us at IGB Live 2019. It's a pleasure to have you all today. I'm Curtis Roach, Conference Manager for Clarion Gaming. Really appreciate you joining us today. We've got some great content, some great speakers, hopefully talking about some topics that are very close to you in your working lives and some issues that we're all dealing with that we can discuss together. So with that in mind, we're going to get straight into it. So could you help me in welcoming our first speaker to the stage, Alex Hunter, who is the former head of digital and online marketing for Virgin Group. So if you help me join him, welcome to the stage. Thank you.
How we doing? So I'm told that you all have to press the button on your headphones and they will be green. It needs to be green for this to take place, to work properly. So I'm entertainment and tech support. Once you've got that figured out, you should be able to hear me if you cannot see me through the gathering mist. I feel like I'm a wrestler. I need to throw a chair at somebody. Good? Because I think once we are good, they'll turn the PA off so we don't piss off the entire building. So while we're getting that, everybody's kind of, ooh, can you still hear me on the headphones? That's exciting. It's like I'm talking to you, like God. While that's all happening, I think everybody's getting their headsets adjusted. If you have any problems, just put your hand up and we'll make a plan. We'll get you sorted out. So let's see. My name is Alex Hunter. By way of introduction, I did spend a lot of time in and around the Virgin Group. I was global head of online for the entire group. Before that, I was part of the team that founded Virgin America in the US, an airline. But I knew it was time for me to leave the group when I was at a conference a few years ago, not pretty similar to this, actually. And all day, no matter who I talked to, I was getting very weird looks. Like man, woman, and child. Everybody was looking at me really strangely. I thought, that's something in my teeth or my flies haven't done? What the hell's going on? So I went back to my my hotel room at the end of the day, took off my conference badge, and that's when I realized it just said Alex Hunter, brackets, Virgin. And I was like, all right, it's time to move on. So here we are. If you've just joined us, may I strongly suggest putting your headphones on, unless you are sitting right in front of me and you can hear me, but it's up to you. We good? Everybody got those things working? All right, let's crack on. We don't have too much time together. My passion is how experiences and brands and organizations and companies and people can stand out, can elevate themselves above the crowd. I've spent a lot of time working with gaming companies all over the world for the last several years in many capacities, and I know it's a challenge in your industry, but don't worry, because it's a challenge in basically every industry on earth. We have created these tools and platforms that allow us, the end user, to create a staggering amount of noise that we now have to kind of compete with. And that gets, I'm going to put my phone on airplane mode in case it's causing any interference. It's hard work to rise above that and connect with the people that you want to connect with, and more importantly, cut them a path so they can connect directly to you. I'm not going to stand here for the next few minutes and say, okay, guys, step 1, do this. Step 2, do that. Step 3, do that. It doesn't work like that. It would be too easy, frankly. And it also assumes I know about as much of your industry as you do, which of course is not true at all. Instead, what I want to do is share some ideas and examples that I've been directly involved with or helped curate or I've experienced as a customer or as an end user, and just some philosophies that I think companies that have figured this out have adopted and embraced and scaled rather elegantly. And the examples I want to share with you are from huge multinational organizations that I'm very confident that you've all heard of, plus some examples from 1- and 2-person companies that I know that none of you have heard of. And that's okay. In fact, I would argue that the lessons we can learn from from those smaller companies are even more valuable because they don't have any money. So they have to be creative. They have to work with the limited resources they have. Fundamentally, the landscape in which we're operating, and I'm not just talking about gaming, I'm talking about business at its purest form, has changed so dramatically that it is unrecognizable from the landscape we operated in even 15 years ago. That is utterly exhausting, that rate of change, to try and keep up with. But I would suggest that actually we shouldn't spend too much time trying to keep up with it when what we've done in the past has worked really well. We just need to tweak it a little bit to work in our own environments. Is anyone here a marketer? Few of you. Okay, I'm a career marketer. Fellow marketers, I'm going to tell everybody our dirty little secret. Marketing is the easiest job in the world. Don't let them tell you otherwise. At least it was until we screwed it up with the web. Back in the olden days, 15, 20 years ago, marketing, advertising, branding was a one-way conversation. It was entirely broadcast. As a company, I would put out my billboard or my radio ad or my TV ad saying, buy my product, use my service, vote for my politician, whatever the message was. And there was no way for me to interact with that message with a billboard. I can't tweet to a company before Twitter has been invented. I can't call them before we've come up with the concept of the call center. So there was no way for me to question the claims that were being made. And marketers we are a very exploitative bunch of people. So we very quickly figured this out and we very quickly took advantage of it to the point where it got ridiculous. These are all real ads from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Basically, smoke cigarettes and you will get healthier. We don't even let cigarette companies advertise in most of the world nowadays. If they tried anything like this, we would put them out of business in 24 hours because we have the tools and the clout to do so. We don't let companies get away with this type of thing anymore. You mean a woman can open it? That's a feature, apparently. So the next time you're putting out a new product or a game or a service, so it's easier to use, it's cheaper per user acquisition or user seat, it's faster to deploy, and women can use it. Try that. I dare you. Watch what happens. And let's not overlook the very obvious sexual imagery in this picture. They knew exactly what they were doing in the 1950s. For my technical people in the room, you mean this is a computer? And the single greatest strapline in advertising history? You bet your sweet telex operator it is. I have no idea what that means. I have this next one framed in my office because I think it shows how far we've come in this conversation. I also think it shows how far we've come as a species. Blow in her face and she'll follow you anywhere. Ladies, is that true? No? Oh, I've been doing it wrong then. I think it's important to point out that they are no longer in business. Now, there is a growing demographic, I feel like perhaps you guys are all part of it, that traditional advertising really doesn't work on. You understand what is trying to be done. You understand what what the advertiser wants you to do or to feel or to react to, and it just bounces right off of you. Now, modern marketers, we like to pat ourselves in the back for solving this problem with the concept of the influencer. Basically, anybody who's got like 500 followers on Instagram. We put the message in their hands and they connect to the people that we want to connect to. That's nonsense. They figured this out 50, 60, 70 years ago. By giving the message to a celebrity with a much louder and much more quote-unquote authentic voice than you, you have an opportunity to connect with a much broader audience and have a built-in endorsement. So if you don't believe a brand, then perhaps you will believe legendary American comedian Bob Hope in one of the creepiest pictures I've ever seen. And if Bob says smoke Chesterfields, you're going to smoke the Chesterfields. Now, you all look like smart people, so you know exactly what is happening here. Bob may not necessarily like Chesterfield cigarettes. He may not even smoke. But they drove a truck full of money up to his house, and that was enough for him to go, yeah, I'll overlook the minor detail that I don't smoke to endorse your product. So if you don't believe Bob Hope, then perhaps you'll believe your doctor. And if your doctor tells little Timmy there to smoke Camel cigarettes, little Timmy will grow up smoking the Camels. No one is sure if they should smoke, if they should laugh at that. It's fine. It's fine. Timmy's been dead for a long time. But the reason we can laugh at that, and the reason we should laugh at that, is because we have moved so far away from this type of relationship between user, customer, whatever you want to call them, and brand, that these don't just seem outdated, they are offensive and ineffective. They don't work. And mercifully, the industry and advertising and branding as a whole is moving away from this, but there are certain industries that are clinging to this model. Fundamentally, the relationship between brand and consumer has changed forever. We have, as consumers, taken back control in this relationship in a very aggressive, borderline violent manner because we no longer tolerate being abused by brands, by a leverage for profit and having minimal representation in the relationship or any influence whatsoever. So we have taken, this has happened very quickly and taken a lot of industries by surprise. But this is a good thing. It's important to say that. But the myth that we're busting in 2019 and beyond is that putting out a product or service is enough. No, there are far more ingredients necessary to create something compelling, something engaging, something that I, as a user, feel compelled to come back to because I want to, not because you have incentivized me to in some way or another. And there are a few ingredients necessary to make this happen. And the first that I like to think of that's the most powerful is to create a sense of emotion. Don't worry, I'm not getting all hippie, motivational speakery on you here. There's some science that's worth considering here. Making me feel something is incredibly powerful. Did anybody watch Mad Men when it was on? Like pornography for marketing people like me. And I liked this quote from the early first season. You feeling something, that's what sells. Essentially, how I feel when I use your product or service, that is what is going to get me to come back. How I feel when I take the lid off of the box of the product and hold that item in my hand for the very first time, that is what gets me coming back. How I feel when I step off the street and into your shop or store or whatever, restaurant, airline, whatever it might be, that is what will get me coming back. How I feel when I'm pissed off and I call your call center, how I feel at the end of that call, that will determine whether I come back 100 times or never and tell 100 of my friends to never come to you as well. There is a Canadian neuroscientist called Dr. Donald Cullen, whose work I'm doing a great disservice by kind of compressing into this slide here. But about 35 years ago, he wrote a staggeringly boring book. But in that book was this gold mine, and I really don't think he understood at the time how important this discovery was. He basically figured out that when we want someone to do something, to act, it is far more efficient to appeal to the emotional side of who we are. And we're not talking about sides of the brain, that's nonsense. We're just talking about components of who we are psychologically. Why? Well, reason will lead to conclusion, right? 1 + 1 = 2. The specifications of this product will fulfill my needs, but they won't get me to stop looking through the shop window and go into the shop, or pick up the phone, or click buy, or enter, or go, or whatever we want the user or customer to do. To do that, we have to make them feel something because that is where action is driven from. Action is regulated by the limbic system in the brain, which also, and this is not a coincidence, where emotion is regulated. They are physiologically, biologically, and psychologically tied together. We have to get people to feel something genuine, not manufactured. I think it's important to point that out. This will be weird with the headphones on, but we're going to try it anyway, because I know I've been a little bit academic so far. What product or brand or service do you love that you use every single day? Perhaps you have since you were a child. Apple, all right, give them to me. Shout them out. What product or service or brand could you not live without? We got Apple so far, in case you can't hear. Netflix. Oh, I'm a bit of a Netflix whore myself. Anyone else? Starbucks. All right, these are good. These are good. So I I did this once in a huge auditorium, and from the back of the very, very dark room, I just heard beer. It was 9:30 in the morning. I had more questions for him than he had for me, but mine is Diet Coke. There's absolutely nothing better to me than a cool, crisp, refreshing, no, they're not paying me, can of Diet Coke. I know it's going to hit the spot. I know it's going to taste the same pretty much wherever I go in the world. I am 100% brand loyal to Diet Coke. So much so that if I go to a bar or a restaurant and I order a Diet Coke, and the waiter or waitress says, "Oh, would Diet Pepsi be okay?" It's like they've spit on my grandmother. Oh, how dare you? How dare you suggest such a thing? Now, the reasonable, rational part of me is like, dude, it's the same thing. It's brown water in a tin can that is slowly killing you. Calm down before they kick us out. Now, the emotional side of me is like, let's burn this place to the ground. If I can have such a passionate emotional response to something as benign as brown water in a can, there is not a product or service or experience on this earth that cannot create that level of connection with someone somewhere. And that's really what we're trying to achieve here, is that connection, because that's what gets people coming back. A great way to do this, or at least a first step, is to remember that behind every click and every call is a human being. And now more than ever, we demand to be treated like one, not as user or guest or something. There, we are humans, and we crave that individuality. We have always known that this is important. This is how business worked since the dawn of time. When I needed something before the internet came along and we ruined it, I would go into a shop, I would tell the shopkeep what I needed. They would say, okay, let's go and find it. Here it is. I would give them money, they would give me the product, and I would leave. That was the only way to do it. Then the web came along and we thought, okay, that's really important, but it's also really, really hard to do in 1995. So let's put it on the back burner. We'll come to it, back to it. Let's go build PayPal and Twitter and Google and all that stuff. Except we forgot to come back to it. And then the revolution happened, and people were like, well, hang on, stop exploiting me for your profit. I'm a human being, and you need to remember that we are in a relationship here. And that sounds expensive. That sounds difficult to treat each player or guest or user or customer in real time. It sounds like multi-million-dollar CRM tools. It's not what I'm talking about. As far as I'm concerned, great customer experience comes from the coming together of lots of little tiny moments to create something delightful, something unique, something wonderful for every person that comes into contact with you. I'll give you an example. There's a hotel in New York City, boutique hotel, so not part of a chain, in the Times Square area. I'm not going to tell you what it is, it's my little secret. Uh, and you know, when you check into a hotel, I first started going to this hotel like 12 years ago. When you check into a hotel, you have to fill in a form more often than not. First name, last name, email address, sometimes passport numbers. Stuff. At the bottom of this one, it said, what are your favorite snacks? And I was like, oh, for God's sakes, blah, 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 blah. Diet Coke, obviously. Completed the check-in process, went downtown for some meetings. When I came back to my hotel room later that day, went straight up to my room, there was a handwritten note from the manager that said, Dear Alex, Alex, this is my name. Welcome, we hope you have a great stay. Basket full of my favorite snacks, fridge full of Diet Coke. This is the greatest hotel in the world. Now, that's a cheap psychological trick pioneered by the Mandarin Oriental Group decades ago. By understanding and listening to what the customer tells us, either explicitly or implicitly, we can then understand their preferences and take something that may seem familiar and comforting to them and place it in their room. So they no longer feel like they are in a cube, just like all the other cubes, 5,000 miles away from friends and family. They are somewhere familiar and comfortable, and they relax, their defenses lower. All that positive brand love flows back to the company, in this case to the Mandarin Oriental. That's not what these guys did right. Here's what they did right. Every time I go back to that hotel, 6 weeks, 6 months, 2 years later, they have kiosks now to check in. I don't have to talk to anybody. It's wonderful. Type in my info, get my key card, go up straight up to my room. But when I get there, there is a note. Dear Alex, welcome back. Context. Basket full of snacks, fridge full of Diet Coke. It sounds so small, but in reality, it is a complete transformation of how they view me as an individual. I am no longer a transaction to be milked for every single penny. I am now part of a relationship, an equal player in a relationship in which we are both investing time, energy, and resource. And if we do it properly, it's beneficial for everybody. Remembering that I have been there before, remembering that I am a human. It sounds So simple. But the human equivalent of not doing this would be like me coming up to you and going, "Hey, how's it going? I'm Alex." And then going over and talking to somebody else for 30 seconds, and then coming back and going, "Hey, I'm Alex." And you're like, "Dude, we just met. You're kind of a dick for not remembering that." We would never do that to a human being. Why on earth would we do it to our customers? That's fundamentally what we're saying here. Now, the great thing is that if we were just looking at the user or customer as a transaction, there would be a lot of data that was generated by those transactions that was useless. But if we recontextualize as a relationship, there is a gold mine of data that is helping us understand our relationship with that customer, their preferences, their dislikes, their behaviors, all of that type of thing. Just as importantly, it allows us to create moments of delight alongside and outside the core user journey, which can differentiate us in that crowded marketplace that we were talking about at the beginning of our session together. Uh, I have a gold card on Virgin Atlantic, not because I used to work for their parent company, but because I travel way too much. I will give you an example. This morning or last night, I was in San Francisco. Yesterday afternoon, I was in Detroit. Today, I'm in Amsterdam. Later on, I fly to Dublin, and then Dallas, and then San Francisco. I live on airplanes. I'm furious they haven't named one after me yet. But how many of you have flown on Virgin Atlantic? Anybody? Okay, the inside of a Virgin Atlantic airplane is nothing compared to the inside of a Singapore Airlines or Emirates or Cathay Pacific. They are a very small airline. They don't have the money for gold-plated toilets and first class and all that stuff. But they have absolutely adopted this mantra at a group level almost without exception across the 300 Virgin businesses. So this was kind of brought home to me, and Virgin Atlantic is kind of the exemplar for this, of recognizing valuable people, frequent flyers, no matter where they are on the airplane. I was flying back from San Francisco a few years ago, and we were maybe 90 seconds after the wheels left the runway, no more than that. And there was an announcement over the PA that said, "Would Alex Hunter please make himself known to the flight crew?" And I was like, "Shit, well, we're already in the air. They can't throw me off." Ding. Moments later, a member of the cabin crew comes up to me and hands me a glass of champagne and says, "From your friend in a high place." And I was like, "Oh, Richard Branson, you're so sweet." That's not what happened. Watch this. If you all go deaf, I apologize.
Southwest 4809, hold short, over runway 28 left. Virgin 42, I have a request when you have a minute.
Go ahead, Virgin 42 Heavy.
Virgin 42, once you guys get settled in, if you could give a warm welcome to Alex and Deanne Hunter. They're good friends of mine that are on your plane tonight.
So that's Alex and Deanne Hunter, Virgin 42 Heavy. We'll do that for you.
You got it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So obviously, I have a friend that's an air traffic controller at San Francisco. That's not the cool part of this story. Okay, that is pretty cool. But here's the thing. Here's what blows my mind about that story. Those pilots were given a piece of information at the single busiest point of that flight, right before they were pushing the throttle forward to take 300 people halfway across the world. That piece of information was utterly inconsequential to the safe passage of that flight. They could very easily and very understandably have gone, "Yeah, okay, sure, we'll do that for you." "No, we won't, because we're super freaking busy right now." And I never would have known, and that would have been totally fine. But instead, they chose to call up a member, one of their colleagues from the cabin, and say, "This person is on the flight. They're a friend of the air traffic controller who got us out 15 minutes ahead of schedule." That's it. That was the extent of the conversation. Now, I can assure you as fact that there is not a single line in the Virgin Atlantic cabin crew employee manual that says, if there is a friend of the air traffic controller on board, give them 50 cents worth of mediocre sparkling wine. Not a word of it. However, throughout the employee handbook, and across the group, Virgin Group, there are entire chapters that inspire, endorse, allow, and in many cases finance frontline staff to do exactly that type of thing, no matter where a passenger is sitting on the airplane, the back of the plane, the front of the plane, to find these moments of delight. Because this wonderful word, which has been ruined and abused, is really what we're after. Everybody know what that is? The Nest thermostat, created by Tony Fadell. who was the creator of the iPod, co-creator of the iPhone. And when he left Apple with his literally billions of dollars, he could have done anything. But he said, I'm gonna go do an air conditioning project because that sounds fun. And they could have made, the white and beige boxes that we have in our homes available in 5 wacky colors, and we would have all gone, holy shit, they've Appleized thermostats. I'll pay $50 more for the red one because that's how we are as a species. But they didn't. They took the entire experience and made it more efficient, more smart, more sensible. But then, more importantly, or just as importantly, they made the physical bit, the bit I interact with, so beautiful that I just want to lick it. So now you have people saying, "Hey, man, why don't you come to my house after work and look at my thermostat?" Which is just weird, but that's where we are. And I love this quote: "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." Translation in our world: I don't care how it works as a user. I care that it works. The experiences that you can unlock for me, the joy that you can create for me, is far more important than the technology required to make that moment happen. The first time I showed my father Uber was about 5 years ago in London. It was raining. It was a Friday night. There was no way we were going to get a taxi. He was getting that angry old man thing that angry old men get. And I was like, look, relax. We're just going to get an Uber. And he's like, what's Uber? Look, the little cars are moving around. Cool. And I was like, yeah, here's ours right now. Boom. As far as my father knows, his son pressed a button on his phone and a frigging car appeared. As far as my father knows, his son is a witch. Now, my father doesn't give a shit about the technology required to make that moment happen. He doesn't care about the politics of the organization, for better or worse. He doesn't care about the battles that rage between cab drivers and Uber drivers in every city on earth. All he knows is that he can press a button on his phone, a car will appear, he gets in, he doesn't have to say anything, but it will take him to where he needs to go. He gets out and he doesn't have to pay. He hasn't figured out it's attached to his credit card, but we'll let him live with that. That's the magic that's being created by these things. That's so powerful. I want to zip through this because we're a little short on time. This is a very powerful subject, and I like sharing this story because it happened a while ago. A friend of mine opened, almost 10 years ago, opened a Mexican restaurant in London, which is great because I love Mexican food, and there was no Mexican food in London at the time. He basically picked the worst time in human history to open a restaurant. The economy was about to implode, and footfall through fast casual restaurants was basically at an all-time low. He knew he had a good product. He just needed people to get through the damn door. So he said, I know what we're going to do. We're going to hold the UK's first burrito eating competition. £10 to enter. All the money's going to go to charity. This isn't about raising money. It's about raising awareness. I just want to show you a couple of pictures from this. This guy was a journalist for one of the big respected newspapers in the UK. And as you can see from his protective equipment, he was absolutely ready to win this thing. That's a burrito. If you're not familiar with a burrito, it's a wrap filled with meat, cheese, rice, vegetables, about the size of a baby. And the challenge was to see how quickly you could eat it. And immediately he goes for it. And he's working hard, and immediately he starts to go very, very, very wrong. Oh no. Oh, are you going to see a man being sick? No. He's fine. He lived. He did not win. My brother won. My brother ate a burrito in 56 seconds. He is the reigning burrito eating champion. I'm very proud of him. This was such a powerful community engagement. It was covered by every newspaper in the UK. It was covered by every trade journal in Europe as a low-cost but engaging and interesting way to introduce a new and foreign product to a cynical audience. They've gone on to expand rapidly. They've seen off a big competitor, which is just really shows that how if you get in at the grassroots level with the people that love you, wonderful things will happen. I want to end on this topic because I think it's the topic that has taken a lot of people, if not most industries, off guard. In the olden days, there was, I want to go back to that, set some context. There was online and offline, and this very thick wall between them. Never the twain shall meet. Online was the IT guys in the basement that no one was supposed to talk to. Offline was everything else. Those days are gone. The line isn't blurred. It doesn't exist. The consumer has forced this change because they have these devices on them 24 hours a day. We cannot dictate where the real world ends and the digital world begins. They do that. So our experiences have to go across them seamlessly. I like telling the story. I'm guessing anyone heard of Pact? Pact are a subscription coffee company based in the UK. Every 2 weeks, you get coffee in the post. Beans, not liquid. That would be disastrous. It's very good. I like them. And this interaction happened the Saturday before Christmas, which was until very recently the biggest retail day of the year in the UK. I was at my grandmother's house in rural England, nursing, I have no shame in admitting, a substantial hangover, crippling hangover, really. I did not want to move anything except my thumb, so I was just idly flicking through Twitter when I saw this tweet, this ad, sponsored tweet. I did not follow them. Proper coffee, hand roasted, blah, 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 blah. Now, we all have that one word that makes our skin crawl, that drives us flipping crazy, triggers us, if you will. You're thinking of yours right now. It could be moist or shrubbery or bespoke. I don't know. Mine is proper. I hate that word so much. I think it's lazy. I think it's elitist. I think it's self-aggrandizing. It's meaningless. And I was so blinded by my brand rage that I actually replied to a sponsored tweet, because that's what stable people do. Fat Coffee, negative points for using the word proper. I think you're better than that. Level 0 subscriber. And I even did the ultra jerk move of putting a full stop in front of my tweet, which back then meant that everybody who followed me could see how mentally unstable I was in this moment. Put my phone back in my pocket, having done my angry old man branding bit, and resumed my hangover. Saturday before Christmas, 2 guys working part-time on this project. Important to reinforce that. Moments later, my phone dings. A reply. Sorry, we didn't mean to sound snobbish, just looking for a word that conveys good taste. Maybe just tasty. Ha 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 ha. Look, I firmly believe that if you genuinely believe in the quality of what you do, you have every right to be confident. Confidence in a brand, just like confidence in a person, is extremely attractive. So I said that. I said, I think you legitimately refer to yourselves as great. I love what you do. Keep smashing it. And they replied very humbly. And I thought, wow, that's a phenomenal case study. I can't wait to share this. 2 guys responding to somebody with clear emotional problems on the busiest retail day of the year, when a normal company would have just gone psycho, blocked, and I never would have heard from them again. That wasn't the end of the story. That Monday, as we're wrapping up the story, the office for Christmas, there's a knock at the door, delivery man, a box full of a packed coffee, a Christmas card, handwritten, Dear Alex, we hope you and your loved ones enjoy this over the festive period. Great coffee, sent fresh, love packed. And I was like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. Oh, that's so good. Those dicks, that's just so good. Not only had they figured out who I was, that I wasn't dangerous, but where I worked, take the time to box up some of their coffee, write a handwritten note that referenced an online conversation, and send it to us. But here's the thing. We were already customers. It's not like they were trying to get us a sample of the product using a gimmick. They were just treating me as a human being. They were making fun of me for making an ass of myself on a public forum. Even to this day, I get random boxes of coffee saying, more great coffee, Alex, you jackass. This is exactly what they should be doing. And they've gone on to raise a lot of private equity money. They've got roasteries all over the country, growers all over the world. Extraordinary. So often when I finish these sessions, people come up to me and say, great, what's next though? What's the next platform? What's the next Snapchat? Why Snapchat? You are in this room at this event because you are already doing great things. Continue to do them. People coalesce around things that make them feel wonderful. Find out who they are, engage with them, keep the conversation positive, and do what you do. Thanks for your time, guys. I really appreciate it.